Hi folks, it's a fantastic day for the nation's hempsters with needless reefer madness laws being removed in order that people who want to grow hemp in this fast growing industry will have a lot less red tape and regulation. It's a very good example of the Ministry for Regulation making life easier for industrious people.
Giving them a hemping ministry, the Ministry for Regulations, the regulatory impact statement shows that police and customs had some concerns about that. What's your response to that?
Well, they did have concerns, and we had to really work through with them that hemp is not cannabis, and it's actually really silly to grow cannabis with hemp. If you want to grow illicit drugs, then A, the hemp just attracts attention, and B, the cross-pollination actually destroys the cannabis content. So if you are into that, don't grow it near hemp.
It says that customs removed their concerns, but does that mean police still had concerns about this?
Well, they initially did, but I think we managed to talk the Minister and Customs and police around. At the end of the day, the police, of course, would always like to restrict the range of things you can do in order to make their policing job easier, but we also have to stand up for people's freedom and right to build businesses and enjoy their lives.
What's your current position on legalisation of cannabis? Is it a conversation that needs to be had again?
Look, my position's always, but I don't know, when you say current position, I'm not that changeable. But I voted.
Who's going to influence your thoughts on something?
Well, I'd like to think I'm quite consistent in my views, but look, I voted yes in the referendum for a very simple reason. I think the most dangerous transaction in New Zealand is when someone goes to a cannabis dealer and gets upsold to P. And so I believe in the long term that we should relax our stance, but it's not something that I'm going to make a big campaign over. We had a referendum, the people voted, they had a say. I'm not going to relitigate it right now.
Minister, the United Nations recently released a report saying New Zealand was at serious risk of weakening Māori rights. It called out the disestablishment of the Māori Health Authority and the minimisation of the role of the Treaty of Waitangi. So this is from the United Nations.
Yeah.
Do you take that seriously?
No,
Why not?
because it's the United Nations.
Do you have any concerns at all about the
I mean, let's be
role of Māori
realistic.
rights?
This is an organisation that puts people from Zimbabwe in charge of the environment, that has people from Middle Eastern countries that have no regard for women's rights go on the Human Rights Council. I mean, the UN's a joke.
Leading Māori health advocates.
Well, if they couldn't be taken seriously here in New Zealand, why do they have to go over to New York or Geneva to find someone that would listen to them?
Does
the UN jump across the board? Is there any more agencies?
No, it does a few things that are actually valuable. For example, it helps us get refugees, but whenever they get into political causes and try to tell us how to run our country when we're being lectured by people from third world countries with disastrous environmental and human rights records, that's a joke.
Should we think about leaving the UN?
Sorry?
Should we think about leaving the UN?
No, because there's some things like, it helps New Zealand identify refugees to come here. The Food and Agriculture Organisation, the FAO, that's really valuable to us. So there are some practical things, and I think it is useful for the world to have a place to talk. But when they start lecturing us about our domestic politics, that's a joke.
Is it going to get any better or any stronger, more robust if comments like this, which have the ability to undermine the UN and its influence on things?
How do you mean?
Do you think that the UN is going to improve by people
by
like yourself making comments like this?
Me tolerating absolutely laughable conclusions from the UN won't make them stronger. They need to be called out when they make crazy comments.
So how do you constructively strengthen?
Well, like I just said, look, there's some practical and useful things they do. We should support that. The world needs a place to talk. We should support that. But a lot of this politicised stuff they do, it's just a bunch of activists who didn't get a hearing in their own country go and lecture others, and that sounds like exactly what's happened here.
So you're quite closed off then to any sort of external voice outside of New Zealand having a perspective on our race relations?
Yeah, pretty much, because New Zealand has a really great record on race relations. There's not many countries that should lecture New Zealand on race relations. For example, I lived in Canada for 5 years. Canada has no right to lecture New Zealand on race relations. Australia, you look at their treatment of Indigenous people throughout the history of their country. They have no right to lecture us, and I put the United States in that category too. There's no other countries that have the kind of settler Indigenous relations that New Zealand has. And I would say New Zealand has done the best out of countries that were settled in the same sequence. So, who are we actually supposed to be listening to on this topic?
If there are certain Māori leaders who feel like they cannot get a voice or a fair hearing here in New Zealand, what should they do?
Well, I think they should first of all ask what is it that they're trying to be heard on, because often if you're not getting a fair hearing, it could be people just disagree with you, and that's legitimate, and nobody by dint of their race has a right to be heard and have everyone agree with them.
Just with your ACT Party leader hat on, perhaps not your Associate Finance Minister hat on, who would you back between Ruth Richardson?
Oh, look, it's like my sisters arguing with my auntie. I like both of them, and I kind of seem to like both of them more than they like each other right now. I just want to get my hands on some of the fudge. I mean, apparently you guys all got sent it. Can you share some?
None of that to the press gallery. What do you make of
Are you sure? They didn't send it to you. If I was running that campaign, I'd send it to you.
You're not backing your finance minister to win this one.
No, I'm not taking it that seriously, to be honest.
What do you make of the campaign, though, that's incoming criticism from the right of the government overspending?
Well, I think that we should have a culture of free speech, and I happen to believe that it's important that the government is tight on the finances. So I listen to people from the CTU and Greenpeace and all these people running these campaigns all the time, often getting their facts wrong. I think people have a right to do it.
Is Nicola Willis tight enough on the finances?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that the ACT Party would like to be tighter than the rest of the coalition, but also that we support the government's position and are proud to be there, because this coalition's a much better deal than the other clowns.
Are you a member of the Taxpayers Union?
No. I think there's a perception that ACT and the Taxpayers Union are one and the same. It's a little bit like saying Coke and Pepsi, because they both like cola, must be one and the same. Actually, they're more competitors than allies or friends.
Are you going to go?
I have a question about Pharmac.
Yeah.
Have you seen the report that there is going to be a 50% increase in cancer diagnoses in the next
Yeah, I
few
have.
years? Are we able to cope with that?
Well, this is why we've massively increased the amount of funding, 604 million extra, dozens of extra cancer drugs, hundreds of thousands of people getting treatments that weren't available 2 years ago. I'm changing the way that Pharmac applies for funding so that if Pharmac can actually save the government money elsewhere, then they can get extra funding. So we're effectively uncapping the budget. And then we've also started funding cancer treatment in private settings. If you pay your taxes, you pay for your private insurance, you should get the options. So right across the board, I am retooling Pharmac to be a totally different organisation. Even my worst enemies will admit I've done well there.
Did you get any advice from officials on that essentially uncapping the budget, on how that might impact Pharmac when it's doing market negotiations? Was there any worry there that it might stop them being able to get a good price?
Well, I said effectively uncapping. What we've done is we've said, look, that they have to work within their budget, but if they can show the Treasury that actually funding Pharmac more will save more elsewhere, then that's a really positive thing. So the one that everyone likes, I'm not saying that this is what we're doing, but a lot of people talk about Wegovy or Hemp and say, look, if that saves us from kidney transplants, it's got to be a good thing. More of that sort of thinking. Doesn't mean that we're we're not really removing the cap, but we're getting rid of that capped mentality is probably a better way to put it.
To be clear, your officials were worried about how that would impact their negotiating position with drug companies?
No, you're the first person to raise it, so maybe you should be a Pharmac advisor.
Your
Sorry.
thoughts on the US's proposal for visiting New Zealanders to have to share their social media from the past 5 years and family details?
Well, the United States has the right to set its own policy. All I'd say is that Kiwis are a pretty friendly bunch. Don't pry too hard on us.
Are you expecting to go to Waitangi next year?
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah. What sort of reception are you expecting, given the reception you got last year when they took the?
Well, it's funny. I heard about a hui up north, I think in Kaikohe, where Te Pāti Māori didn't show up, and someone said, you know what? At least David Seymour shows up, and there was a big murmur of agreement.
On the US ESTA issue, though, I mean, it's one of our most important trading partners. It's part of a trend making it more difficult to get into the US. Is that going to be a problem for us?
Well, I don't think the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand having a crack at them will make things any easier.
What's the ACT Party's position on the potential transfer of stewardship land on the West Coast to iwi?
Look, it's a government policy. We've supported a wider deal that allows a lot more activity. I think that's a good thing. And if it also comes with transfer to iwi, that we've had a history of settlements, of treaty settlements for a long time. Sometimes some public land goes to Māori. Probably not the way I would do it if I could start New Zealand 180 years ago, but it's where we are.
How would you do it?
180 years ago.
Well, how would you do it now?
I would have passed the Regulatory Standards Act in 1852 and respected property from the beginning.
What was your preferred course of action now rather than what they're going?
Given I was not elected in 1852, I would say that we got to look at the reality of the Ngāi Tahu settlement. It does mean that there's a claim on the divestment of public land. You have to work within the law, and if it also means we get more mining and more jobs in the South Island, then it's great.
So you're comfortable with where it's landed?
Well, I accept it. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable. I would accept that it's the reality, and I don't think that we're going to get anywhere by relitigating treaty settlements in the spirit or the letter in this country, so we've just got to work through that. All right, thank you.